Welcome to the Rise and Flow podcast with me, your host, Elaine, a 5-1 manifester and the goddess of fun. This is a space where we go deep into unlocking your magic so you can step into your power in your life and business. Tune in weekly with me and a host of expansive guests where we dive deep into areas such as energetics, spirituality, and business so you can rise and flow. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. And today I have an amazing guest joining me from Asia, Melody Crisp, who is originally from the US and is a certified physician assistant, cultural anthropologist, and one of the co-founders of THR5ve, an amazing charity empowering communities holistically. I know you've worked in Iraq, Thailand, Myanmar, and I'm bringing her on today to discuss leadership in crisis and how she is innovating aid and innovating healing in Myanmar. So welcome, Melody. It's an honor to have you on at this very important time.
Elaine, and it's an honor to be on here. Thanks for inviting me.
Before we get stuck into Myanmar and what's happening and the work that you're doing there, tell us a little bit about your journey, I suppose, into rising into your purpose as a leader in this space. And how did you become an anthropologist and physician?
Well, my journey to living internationally started in 2008, and I took a gap year. I had graduated university and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I moved to Iraq to do some relief and development work, and that completely changed my life in so many ways, including leading me on the path to medicine and getting introduced to a cultural anthropologist who trained me in cultural anthropology and has kind of become a mentor over the years. And then from that, ended up living internationally in India and then in Thailand for the last 10 years. And we started THR5ve actually during COVID. And out of out of burnout and out of a kind of hitting rock bottom and everything was falling apart and we needed to reevaluate our lives. And so we did. And THR5ve was really born out of a really, I think, dark and kind of rock bottom moment, which is really, really special.
Beautiful. Tell me about THR5ve, right? Because it is an amazing charity. And what I really love is your holistic approach when you're going into, do aid work, one in terms of obviously preserving the culture, but also supporting people with trauma release as well. So it's looking at the mind, body, spirit connections. This is why I was like,
yes,
right,
of course.
Get you on, let's talk and share about how you're innovating this space.
So we had worked, my husband and I started THR5ve together, and we really wanted it to be holistic and really culturally informed and in a way that the community really was able to lead. And we weren't coming in as kind of white saviors or these experts, but as people who were learning and working kind of shoulder to shoulder with the community in a way that would take assets that already exist in the community and be able to carry them forward into the future. And I've believed kind of as long as I can remember that everything is interconnected and our wellness is a spiritual, emotional, and physical thing. You can't be physically healthy and neglect the spiritual aspects and then be truly healthy, and vice versa, all around. And so we really wanted to create something that was different than what we had seen before. And we had the experience and the background to be able to try it. And so we went for it to see if we could, affect some good change. And the coup happened while we were starting THR5ve. And so it was just this, flurry of events that ended up leading us to starting THR5ve and working in Myanmar and where we are today. It was all very serendipitous.
Amazing.
How it all came together.
Before we jump into the earthquake relief, I suppose to give a bit of context on Myanmar. I mean, if anyone's on regular listens to this podcast, ironically, my last episode was about finding peace and why I unfollowed everyone on social media. And kind of explained a little bit about my digital background and how I lived in Myanmar in 2013, 2014, just as they came out of military rule and is putting in infrastructure in the country. So we were providing ICT, telecom services. And I would have done some charity work and CSR work. So I have a great understanding of the political landscape. And I kind of shared some of the challenges I suppose we face in that last podcast. But for you, give us a little bit about it in terms of your kind of side to this, right? Because the country really did evolve for a number of years. And then during the pandemic, which massively changed, I mean, I think it obviously caused a global awakening, but this is when the coup took over again. and the country has been in civil war ever since. And it was so the whole system is already broken. So how have you been able to lead in this already crisis? And can you share a little bit on some of the projects that you've done, like the women's birth kits and just what people are facing there?
Yes. So we actually started the jungle birth kits with a local partner. She had been doing it for a year or two already when we partnered with her, and she was doing amazing work with these birth kits, giving kind of like this holistic package that's not just for the birth, but kind of survival things as well, with food and like shelter, solar lights, and things that the family kind of has a better chance at survival at. And when we saw what she was doing and her community trust and her ideas for her community, we were like, we have to support this. And that's how the Jungle Birth Kit kind of came to be. Through, she's been such a great support to us and kind of a guide into the community, and has taught us so much about the strength of the community, but then also like how the junta is attacking relentlessly people within the country, and has taught us so much about what's going on the ground. And then as we worked with her, it opened up other opportunities for us to do things like clean water systems and mobile solar units. And we're working on some healthcare projects, and we're planning in the future for mental health resources, because trauma is something that's really near and dear to my heart. And trauma resources for people, especially when they're displaced, is actually what I am doing my doctoral thesis on right now. So I'm really into like movement based or breathwork based, like non-medication healing for trauma, and like self-administered resources that people can access even when their displacement is ongoing.
Amazing. And this honestly just brings so much music to my ears when I hear this. And this is when I was actually like, right, okay, I want to find the line charity part. I was like looking at you guys going, wow, okay, holistic work, trauma. I mean, I haven't been in the space a long time, and I'm kind of like, we don't see this. And this is where, well, I'll say to all my listeners here who are trained in one of these modalities of like somatics, is seeing is in like how we're here to innovate change. So, I'm always like, I'm here to, well, maybe create shock, also instill hope in people, but like we're in a situation in the world where systems are collapsing. So it's been huge collectives of people having awakenings and training and following their soul purpose and healing, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, this is actually how we innovate change now. It's taking old models and infusing and getting back to mind, body, spirit connection in every solution that we're doing, be it in business strategy, aid, et cetera. So can you tell us, I suppose, before and we'll jump into Myanmar now in terms of like as a call for people to help, like for you, right, as a charity, right? And I actually say this as an invitation to anybody listening to this today. I mean, for me, and I would have spoke about this many times over podcasts, I'm like, I feel in my soul, or I see as like my greater work is with children. This is something that really activated with me when I worked in Asia. I just love the people, like all the different cultures that are over there in the different countries that I've lived in. But it's something that really touched my soul. And when I was doing kind of volunteer and charity work, I always promised myself when I would eventually grow a pair of balls big enough to like leave the corporate world and set up my own business and whatever. And I was like, when I get to a point of stability, I want to go back there and do more volunteer work. And I always explain this concept to people, no matter what we're doing in going after growth, we're programmed traditionally to be like, when I have this, I'm going to do these things and whatever. And I talk about this in the context of whether you want to launch podcasts or a business or whatever you want to do. And then I was like, Elaine, you're applying the same principle to the charity work. You don't need to be a millionaire to be a charity worker. And then I was like, well, I can actually just give like 10% of the proceeds of a course. Like, there's many ways I can volunteer my time to like, help you guys out with social media or like any charities. One, this is an invitation to anyone. Like if this is something, giving back is something that's more on your agenda this year, that there is so many ways that you can actually do that. Like, so find the cause that you're passionate about. And two, maybe that is with Melody and her amazing team of work that they're doing at Thrive. What are different ways that people can get involved in terms of being a partner for you guys for the charity?
People can get involved by giving and then volunteering. And Elaine, I loved what you were saying earlier about not always, or like setting things like, oh, for the future, I'll do this, or the future, I'll do that. And I think what I've learned a lot from the local community is like this kind of gift economy of giving what we have in the moment. And I think that's a really powerful thing. I've spent a lot of my life thinking like, oh, when I hit this benchmark, I'll do X, Y, and Z. And one of the biggest changes for me personally has been like, we're just going to do it with what we've got right now. So like social media terrified me when we started it, and it still kind of does sometimes, but it was like, I don't know how to do this, but I'm just going to like take the next step. And sometimes it's not about getting it perfect. Well, it's almost always about not getting it perfect, but taking that next step and being challenged and growing. And so, yeah, whatever the next step is I think probably the right one is to like either give $5 and then see how that goes, or give 10% of something and see how that goes. Or if you have extra time, then give that time and see like what comes. Cause I think it's really important for us health wise to be generous with our time and our resources and our skills.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, anyone that's listening to this podcast are that entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. And I suppose it's more just opening up the conversation, right? Because I think we look at like the more traditional ways of business being done. And it's like, it's always like delayed. I mean, that's how the patriarchy is set up. It's like, just dangle a little carrot over here, and it's like, no, like if you're passionate about something, if it's coming to your soul right now, it is for you on any dream level. Like, I mean, your soul is not looking at much as in your bank account. It's like it's giving it to you, and it will line up the steps for you. So, and I'm sure you've seen this. I mean, Melody, right? Well, there is no other place in the world that has ever challenged my patience as much as Myanmar because of the level of red tape, particularly for someone who likes freedom and is an Aries and a manifester, as Myanmar. So, I mean, even if you applying this lesson to your approach to working, like there is no more challenging country in the world that you could have gone to try and set up an amazing holistic charity than Myanmar. But I mean, I'm sure, and as we've talked about, like the challenges is what has allowed you to grow. Do you have any like nice kind of like success stories, I suppose, of some of the impact by just taking this leap, how leading through the crisis has stood to you?
I think I know the personal like successes more than I know the like, because we're investing so much into the future that I think we're not going to always see the things we're investing now until down the road. So we're investing a lot up front into the community, hoping that it pays off down the road. But personally, I've grown so much in my confidence. I mean, when we started, I would cry under my desk and be like, I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to lead this. Like I was a very reluctant, I had done a lot of like personal, like assessments and kind of awareness building, and had taken some time to really look at what my strengths were and how I could lead out of them. And it was not all of it was leadership focused, but it was very leadership focused. So I knew that was the next step, is I needed to step into my leadership. I was terrified. I would cry under my desk and be like, I don't know how to do any of this. I had never started anything before. And it was like, and here we are, and we're 3 years later, and it's like we put, all of our we were financially like took a massive risk. We socially took a massive risk. Like we took all these risks, and it's paying off. And I think it's like that belief that when it's the right time, it's going to work out. And that being like who you are truly and working out of who you are truly is really powerful and really like, yeah. And it's not successful necessarily by everyone else's standards, but it is success like personally. Like I'm living the life that I want to live most of the time. And I'm really, really thankful for that privilege, because it's a huge privilege to get to like create the space and the environment that you want to live in.
It's 100%. And like, I mean, this is the core piece that I say to everyone on this podcast, and exactly what you said, like where it's like, I've paid you to say some of these things. I'm like, success looks completely different to every single individual. But okay, so let's dive into Myanmar, right? Our beautiful, amazing country. So this amazing country, over what is it, 55 million is the population now?
I don't know. Numbers. I warned you before we started.
I'll say a funny joke on this one, actually, right? So when I worked on the bid tender for Myanmar, and like the business case, whatever, 13, we were quoted by the government that 65 million people were in the country. So like if you're building a business case and looking if it's going to be a profitable business investment or not, I can talk about all these things now. But so the business case was built on these numbers. And then actually when we moved in, and then they're like, oh, we did a census. Actually, there's only 55 million people. I'm like, where did 10 million people go? And that from a business point of view, that's like, whoa. But anyway, so around this month, it's a beautiful country that has been forgotten about the world many, many, many times. So this is why, I mean, And I thank everyone who's already made a donation to the Myanmar Relief Fund that I set up in GoFundMe, by the way. But this is why when this happened, it was like my manifested creative urge. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning and been like, no, you need to set this up because Myanmar will be forgotten. Nobody will talk about Myanmar. And because it doesn't serve enough of a global political agenda. And I can say that as a non-political whatever person, but it's devastation that's actually happening there right now. And it's really, really difficult to get money into the country. I mean, even for me, just as an individual, like, it's like, oh no, we don't accept donations for this country, et cetera, et cetera. And we have to you have to back channel. So this is the story of your life innovating. So do you want to give us a little background, I suppose, on more the relief efforts that are happening right now and the challenges you're facing?
So many challenges. I will give you a few numbers that I do have because I focus on these numbers a lot and they kind of live like in everything I do. Is there's right now 20 million people. And I think this was before the earthquake. So this number has probably grown in the last week, but 20 million people were in need of humanitarian assistance. And then 3.5 million people had been displaced within the country right before the earthquake. And so we're dealing with like massive amount of need, a situation where like a lot of the people, most of over 80% of Myanmar is rural. And so you have people in the city centers, but living outside of that, there's electricity issues, massive like access to food and clean water issues. The internet is often shut down by the government to prevent like what's actually going on from getting out to the rest of the world. So it's a very challenging context. And then when the earthquake hit, that just, I think, complicated everything even more, because then the roads that were already limited are now like destroyed, and like it's very hard to pass. And the junta is actively blocking aid from going to areas that need it, and they're actively blocking people from going in from the outside. They're requiring certificates of approval for people to deliver aid. And so even some of the people we're working with are having a hard time getting aid to the areas that need it because they're at risk of being arrested if they help. So it's very, very challenging. It requires a lot of creativity and innovation. And one of my favorite words from India, which is jugaad. Are you familiar with jugaad, Karna? So like it's a creative way of like finding a solution that like no one would ever think would work, but you just somehow you find a way, and it might not ever work again, but you're like finding that way to make it through that. That was something we learned in India, is like finding a way no matter what, not giving up, but finding a way through.
No, and this is like when people are always like to me going, "Hey, like, how are you so resilient?" or whatever, and I'm kind of going, I was like, God, some of my life experiences, and like Myanmar is somewhere that really touched the core of my soul. It's seeing the creativity in people who had nothing, and seeing like then like when you would bring in the solar powered like lights and stuff into villages that never had. And bear in mind, so they're in darkness, like, so they it's great, they work with the circadian rhythm of like when the sun rises, sun sets, but it's like sun sets and then they're like in darkness. So like what it actually allowed people is like, by providing them internet access and lights, for example, they started coming together as a community and doing community education and teaching and learning and developing new skills. And it's actual real community. Like you see, I mean, we work a lot in the online world. Well, sorry, I do. And, there's so much bullshit in the coaching space and whatever. And I'm like, when I see community, I'm like, this is community, right? This is people coming together to innovate and get out of survival mode as well, right? I mean, I know the Western world, we think that we're not in survival mode, but the reality is a lot of us are. But like, this is people that's grassroots, but like they innovate with the objective of like what your charity is like they all deserve to thrive and have access to these basic services. And it makes no sense that in country that the junta is preventing aid. But this has happened on repeat. If we want to talk about patterns, this is a pattern in this country over and over.
Yeah. I mean, Cyclone Nargis, Cyclone Mocha, like just keep going back. Like the flooding in October, there was massive flooding in October, and it was kind of the same thing. Like you just see it over and over again for a very long time.
So can we talk a little bit in terms of like some of the work? Because what I've noticed, I don't know about you actually, in my fundraising efforts for the past week, is like people are skeptical about donating to charities like the UN, across globally.
Oh, yeah, of course.
It's like, oh, there's huge things happening in the kind of aid space, like corruption, one thing another. And this is why I'm like, no, I'm going to find innovative charities. And this is like, I mean, there's different ways, and like you're doing it you're innovating this space, but to share, I suppose, in terms of like how the funds are used. Like I've had to tell people, I'm here going like, this is personally coming from me to the people on the ground in Myanmar. I was like, because I've actually had people refuse. Well, and I don't donate to these charities anymore. It's just fueling war crime. And I'm kind of going like, no, this has literally been given into rice and water for basic essentials for people that are trying to recover. Because the numbers, I think, as it stands now, is about 3,000 death toll. But I'd say it's next that, well, definitely over 10. Based on my experience and looking at the fact that like foreign aid has been so slow to get into the country. If it's not blocked, like it's very difficult to access. So, and I mean, is it being accurately reported? These are all things we don't know. But you're here and you're innovating and you're leading and you're delivering amazing kits to people. Tell us a little bit in terms of the usage of the funds.
So particularly for the earthquake I was talking to you before we got started about kind of our approach is we are primarily a development organization, and we do relief work because when situations like the earthquake hit, there's a really big spike in awareness and people are really more engaged in those seasons. And so what we did is we're giving like short and medium and long-term programs to kind of sustain our response long-term to the community. So at first we did we sent money in to local people that are like vetted and trusted on the ground who can get the aid to people. And we sent like food and rice and basics. And pretty quickly they came back and was like, this is really great and really needed, but what we need is actually like clean water. We don't need bottled water for the next, for unforeseen future, but we need a water system. And so right now what we're working on is getting a clean water system into one of the communities, which is like kind of spans that short-term and long-term relief and development work, because that's something that is both needed right now. We're also listening to the local community because that's what they're asking for. We're not saying like, oh, this is what you need, we know better. They're saying, hey, we're on the ground, this is what we need. Can you do this? And that's one of my favorite things about what we do is it's like community led. I have ideas about what I want to do from my experience, but we often listen to our partners, and I'm so happy when I'm outvoted, when they're like, no, this is what we're doing. And I'm like, yes, okay, great. You feel passionately about it. You know your community the best. Like, let's go with that. And then I have a few ideas right now and they're not firmed up yet, but we're planning right now for the future and how we can help rebuild in small, sustainable ways. And I think that's part of the leadership thing, is not just doing the relief and giving all the money to the relief right away, but it's also being able to plan and prepare for the future. Because like in leadership, you have to have a vision for the future. You have to be able to like say, okay, this money, we need to set some of this aside for the next emergency, because there will be a next emergency and we're going to need to have like something that we can give up front then, right? We're going to have to plan for the midterm. We can't just give water bottles indefinitely. We like that creates a lot of problems. So let's do something midterm that we can like kind of shift that into a more sustainable model. And then like, how can we plan long term for after people have gotten out of that like crisis phase? How can we plan long term so that people can recover and have places to stay and places to learn and work? And that's really what I'm about, is not just, I love the like immediate needs. Like I don't love crises, but I love like I work well in high pressure situations, but you also have to be able to plan for the long term, especially as a leader. I think it's a really vitally important thing, is being able to take like what we've been given and plan it out for everyone.
100%. I haven't actually seen Melody's human design chart yet. We were talking about this before I come on, but I'm like, she's definitely a 5-1 profile, because exactly when I was talking to you last week, and already even as well, when I'm reaching out to my network for donations. And I've been talking to a couple people who do like philanthropists, whatever, and I'm like, can you help long term? Like I'm put in solutions. And this is for anyone listening who has a business that can potentially support some of these efforts. So like this is like water filtration, breathwork coaches. Like I was thinking even in things like, I mean, this is where I'm like, we come together to innovate. And I said this to my husband. My husband is doing an online breathwork session with some of the volunteers online who are like, I mean, like the trauma that that they've experienced themselves, that they're exposed to, their survivor's guilt. There's so much. And I think as well, it's not even just a normal, and not that an earthquake is normal, but like, it's not just an earthquake, right? It's like they're going out there afraid for their life. I've had people that I'm in contact with on the ground, and they are like, they wouldn't come on for a podcast because they're afraid for their life, because if they're local, they're getting threatened if they speak out. So like,
Yes.
I'm saying well done to you for getting out there and, just being like, no, I'm going to lead in this space anyways, because there is a risk. I mean, I've been there
Yes.
myself. I've experienced it. So what other ways? One way I was saying, even in terms of like for you, if we to look at this, I was like, Johnny, can you do like a online free course on like down regulation exercises that could be shared or whatever? Somebody maybe listening to this that may have something based on like what Melody's shared on like the mission of the charity, and that could potentially help or create some sort of a synergy in the offerings. Like, do reach out to her, or reach out to a different passion, or like something that you really feel passionate about supporting, because this is our time to lead this change now. And as you have said, it's like no, I'm just going to go with what I have. Like, this is we're in the Pisces Virgo nodal return now, which is like collectively we need to let go of perfectionism and just start taking action and lead from heart.
100%.
So do you have any other invitations that you want to offer to anybody listening in terms of like stepping up to support?
I mean, reach out to me. I love collaborating with people. I think community I was just thinking about coming onto this, and this isn't like, I'm not leading by myself. I'm leading from community. Like I just happened to ended up being the face that was, I mean, as the leader, you end up being the face, right? I stepped into that and chose that. But behind me and surrounding me and next to me are so many people who have joined with us and become part of the community of Thrive, because Thrive is a community effort. Like, it's not just me doing this, it's the whole community. And so, yeah, I welcome people to come join us, because I think we are better when we're connected to each other and learning from each other and growing. And so, yeah, connections are so vitally important. And I love meeting people and getting connected. And I think when people are being themselves and doing what they're gifted at, and then offering that generously back to the community, whether it's their like local community or this like community that we're creating globally of people who really want to take action when they see things. They don't want to just like sit with it and feel guilty or turn away and act like it's not happening. I think that's really powerful. And when we take these like small acts and these small steps, it can really build a really big momentum change in taking action. I'm a big fan of taking action.
Me too. I love taking action. And this is, it all makes a difference. And I think, I mean, I'm going to admit I was very angry. My not self team was a manifestor. When I launched the fundraiser, I expected, honest to God, I was like, well, first of all, I was good. My meditation was like, like 11,111 euros, right? And I was like, right, that should be easy to raise. Like, I mean, in business context, you're like, boom, whatever, right? You see such big numbers all the time in businesses, and I'm here going like, well, this is a really important cause. Sure, this should be very easy. I was expecting like this. However, when I was actually setting up the fundraiser, then did I put an extra zero by mistake? And in the metadata, it was shared to Facebook. It was 111,000. I was like, do you know what? I actually believe this is possible. Let's just go for it and see what happens. And then like, I didn't think I got like 300 euro in the first hour. And I was like, is this all? And it really, and maybe there's a bit of a trauma response that activated me, because I'm here like the rest, I'm here going like, these people need help right now. And it's obviously because of my knowledge of the country. And I did speak a little bit without getting too political about like, yes, there was no relief in the tsunami. And you see, I was there. I remember even years later, my first time in Yangon, I went over to Schwedagon Island across from the Strand, and we got the ferry over. And I just couldn't, and everyone's just like living in huts. And this was 2013, so like 5 years after the tsunami. And the locals are just sharing of the devastation that they're still living in 5 years later from the tsunami. And nobody talked about the tsunami impacts. We only heard about Thailand and this point again, right? Which there's movies made about it. Myanmar, there's nothing. And so this is why I was like, no, I feel really, really called to, I suppose, talk about this, highlight it. And I'm sure like if anyone else feels like spreading the message, they can invite you onto your podcast. And this is, my husband was saying to me, he was like, Elaine, he was like, it's not just about the money here. He was like, raising awareness is actually really what is needed right now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because so many people are unaware of what's going on. So it's not just like give $5 or $500 and then like be done. It's like actually engaging in what's going on and being aware and looking for stories and like looking for it and following things that kind of keep you up to date. Because I mean, I deeply believe that we are all interconnected like globally, and we can't like as much as individually we can't be healthy if we're neglecting a part of ourselves. we globally, I don't think, can be healthy as like society and as a community if we're neglecting parts. And so I think like when you look at Myanmar and a lot of countries, there's not a natural connection point. And I think it's really important to choose to engage with that, because there's something I think really important and valuable about when we refuse to look away, when we refuse to like kind of ignore those things that would be easier to ignore, or those things that maybe we don't need to give attention to because they're not like, you know, right in front of us waving the big flag. Yeah, I think there's a lot of like internal value in that.
Well, for sure. I mean, I've spoken to people on the deeper energetics piece of this, right? Because as we've talked about this, I mean, I've never seen a land so precious. Like there's pagodas and temples all over Myanmar. Like I honestly feel so privileged that I got to like live there, call it home, witness the beauty, but I also saw the darkness. I've never seen that like polarity to the same extent there. But if we look at earthquakes, it's like the land literally and the people have reached this pressure point that it's just like so, and it happened around eclipse, so like that's not lost on me either. But
No.
what do you think in terms of your thoughts on? And I wrote this in one or two email campaigns fundraising for this because I'm kind of like, I know people are desensitized because since 2020 it was like pandemic and that was like drilled into people for 2 years, which activates everybody's survival response, regardless if they've got a roof over their heads and they have a full-time job. It's just like more and more and more. Like so, if people are not on their path of healing and self-development and self-awareness to mastery, which I'm sure most people are that's listening to this podcast, but if they're not, they are majorly stuck in survival mode and potentially unconscious of it. And I feel people have got really desensitized to these things. And I know, I mean, like me, some things I don't get involved in because I see the bigger political agenda behind it. And I'm like, no, this is not my bag. I'll stand up for what I feel passionate about. But like, where can you see this affecting the aid and the fundraising sector, right? Like, it's just like, well, I think there's it's a double-edged sword of this as well, right? Because there's awareness, and I've been very much more like sharing pictures of like me and my charity work, and me and some of the kids, and me and whatever. Because I'm like, I'm not going to put up the traumatic pictures to like shock, grief people into donating, because I think we've become numb to these things.
I think it's a tension for sure, because like even leading a nonprofit, there's that tension of like, I see these really traumatizing, horrific pictures and I need to hold space for that. And I need to know what's going on. And yet I don't want to like cause secondary trauma for other people by sharing too much of that. But then I also struggle because it's like, but you need to know what's going on. Because when I post these beautiful pictures that are like a mom with a birth kit and she's smiling and her newborn's there, like, it's a really fine line between like what gets called poverty porn in a lot of the aid sector of like showing these like malnourished children to try and get like more donations. And it's like, and then versus like ethical storytelling where you're like promoting like the self-sufficiency of people and they're like honoring them and respecting them and showing them in a light that's like in their better moments, not in their like worst moments, and being mindful of how we do that. It's definitely a tension. And I think at different times I land on different ends of that spectrum of like, there have been times where I'm like, we absolutely will not show anything that's not like the best version of someone that I can highlight. And then there's other times where I'm like, the word just needs to get out about what's going on because this is so horrific and most people can't imagine it, that they need to know like how bad it is because it's not getting out otherwise. And so I think it takes a lot of wisdom and maybe some gut intuition to know when the right time for those things are and the right audiences as well. Because there's certain places where I think that you can share those things and certain places where maybe it's not the wisest.
So tell me more about ethical storytelling. This is something I always say to people on this podcast. And I'm like, in leadership and being heart-led, I'm like, share from the scar, not the wound, on a personal, individual level, right? Because I hear a lot of people, like they're constantly traumatizing because they're in the middle of it themselves and they haven't actually gathered all of the lessons because there's layers.
Yes.
And it reached, because I know you did an article on this because you're like, you switched to ethical storytelling and how that changed. So can you elaborate a little bit in terms of for those of us who are not as familiar with this term, like what is ethical storytelling? Because I think this is an important point because I feel like mainstream media has kind of like ruined the charity sector fundraising space. And I do agree a lot of it is driven by politics. But I think then smaller NGOs and charities like yourselves that are coming with a heart-led approach then can get left behind. And this is why I'm here like, no, I'm like, well, one, I want to get you on, and then but it's given the voice then to all of the people that are silenced in Myanmar that have always been forgotten. And this time I'm kind of going, no, that's not going to be the case. So tell us a little bit about ethical storytelling. I suppose for anyone actually that's kind of working in the space, I think even people can take a lesson from this in sharing healing journeys from people as well. Because sometimes it's a bit insane what I do see online.
Yeah, so I'm kind of blanking on the names right now, so I can give it to you later. But there were a couple of women who actually pioneered the ethical storytelling revolution. And there was this like pact you could sign on a website that you were going to commit to ethical storytelling. And what it was is like getting consent before you interview someone, before you take pictures. So like we have a consent form that we use before we take pictures or before we interview anyone, and we get their permission, and we either have a conversation or it's a form based on their literacy level of like, this is what we're using it for. You're giving consent for us to post your photo or not post your photo, or to share your interview with your name changed or not. Like there's lots of like nuance within it, and they can choose like, oh, I'm willing to share this for a week. I'm willing to share this indefinitely. I am not willing to share. I'm going to give you the information, but you can't share anything related to me. And so that is something that we worked really hard to do, is to get verbal or written consent from every person that we post. And we, because of the security concerns of the situation that we work in, we regularly change names and photos and text. So it'll be like kind of a mix up of like the name and the photo and the text will be different to protect their identity and their story. But everyone who shows up on our website and on our social media has we have obtained consent, and we try to tell stories in a way that is honoring of their dignity and their personhood and their like autonomy, and in a way that like I wouldn't want somebody coming in right after I had a traumatic situation and taking a picture of me like in my worst moment and then sensationalizing my story. I want to approach somebody with that same respect and dignity of like, I'm not going to share as much as I can. And I don't think we're always going to get it right, but as much as we can, we're going to share it from a place of like dignity and respect, and with like explicit consent, not just like taking what we can. Because I think like, I mean, I know the algorithm is built on sensationalism and like emotional reactions. And what we're trying to do is build it on like, I mean, on ethics. I love ethics. I love talking about it, and integrity. Yeah. But it's like, we're going to take a hit for this. Probably we're not going to like rise in the algorithm as much as we would if we were maybe sensationalizing it more. But I believe that that's going to pay off long term as we treat like others the way we want to be treated and treat each other with dignity and respect and kindness. I think that it's so underrated.
I think we need to do like a masterclass on this or something, because this is something like I see this in the healing world. I see it in the wellness world. And this is what my last podcast episode was about. I was like, yes. And I mean, I'm all for AI now as well, by the way. Like, as in, I love innovation and tech. I'm Aquarius rising sign. But I do think we need to be more mindful of like how we're using these things. And the thing is that we are all unaware of. We have been unconsciously trained to be social media sluts. Like, I mean, individually, collectively, organizations, because the algorithm has trained us, and we create actually in ways that's beyond our values and that's beyond human integrity. So like literally, I actually had a day recording. I wanted to do something on rebirthing, and I was like, I have no video footage of me sitting down, fucking bawling, crying when I'm having my dark night of the soul. Or, you know, I have none of these moments, but I was like, I want to go and recreate it for myself. Because I was like, that's actually just more traumatizing. And actually, I think it's also a trauma response. It's like not feeling seen, not feeling validated. I think over authenticity has become a trauma response online, where people are like getting online crying. No. Share from the scar, in all of the ways, individually, collectively, as organizations. So, and I think particularly in like, I mean, it's great to highlight this in the area of aid work, because this is an area that's, well, it's suffering for many reasons, but also because of how desensitized we've become as humans to what goes on. It's just like, oh, well, can I not? Sure, I can't even make a difference. Yes, we can. We can make a difference individually. Absolutely. And we can also make a difference by actually being more mindful of like how we're showing up, how we're leading, what we're creating, and go like, well, actually, is this ethical? Is it integral to me as an individual first?
Yes, 100%.
So one last question for you as an amazing leader. Well, you're always leading in times of crisis. Like, let's be real on this. And we were talking about you love growth. You're a
Yes.
natural growth seeker, obviously, which is amazing.
Yes.
And we talked about like older versions of ourselves before we're coming on. We were talking about like,
Yes.
we both have burnt out and over functioning as women is classically inbuilt in our DNA. And particularly when you
Yes.
come into areas of aid or healing
Yes.
or anything that touches your
Yes.
heart, the empath gets overactivated. And we can go into our shadow as well. So I know you've been there, you've
Yes.
got a lot of lessons. Tell me how you avoid this now so you can actually lead sustainably.
Let me think about this one. There's so many things. So many things. I think when I go back to it, it's going back to the practices that I've built in. And a lot, I mean, I could go into like in depth about a lot of these practices, but the two things that are kind of coming to mind is like holding to the practices that I need to do well, which is like I need sleep. Like I need my sleep and I need to have a full night's sleep to function well. And so like as much as I am able to, right, protecting that. And seasons, right? Like, especially when you're dealing with crises, like it might be full on for 10 days, but making sure that like in the longer season of not just one day, but maybe a month, that you're taking time to rest and to recover and to kind of balance what's been given energetically. And then community. Like I have such a great community of support of people who are like, when the crisis hits, they come on board and help however they can, whether it's like picking kids up from school or helping like just, like logistically with things around in life so that I can focus on what needs to happen. I would not at all be able to do this without my community's support, both locally and then like my friends are scattered all across the globe and they check in and I can just say, hey, this is what's going on. And they're supporting me in their ways, showing up as who they are, which I really appreciate. But it's simple habits like drinking enough water and moving my body and making sure that I'm getting offline, which can be like right now I've been online way more than I normally am because of because of the earthquake. But then it's like when I'm off, like I will like give a friend a phone and be like, I'm off for the next 2 hours. I'm giving you the phone so that even if my phone is blowing up, like I'm not on it. I don't see it. Or getting outside, being in nature is a big one for me because that really resets my nervous system and helps me remember like my place in the world and how small I am and how big the world is and those kinds of things, keeping my spiritual practices and sleep and moving my body and eating well, like all of those things I think are really important to avoid burnout. And having friends who remind you when you're on the way to burnout. They're like, stop, I see where you're headed. We know this. You need to slow down right now.
I was so proud of you last week because I was like, yeah, like let's record status. Well, I know you've got huge connectivity challenges. So I'm like,
Yes,
well, whatever, I'll make it work for your
today.
schedule. No, which is fine. Well, I'm here, girl. I lived there pre-internet times. I know what it's like. But I was when you were like, no, I need like I've been at this for 10 days now. I need to take a break, and I'm like, absolutely, like you go. And I preach that now because I, like you, we've both been the other side of like, just one more day, and I'm kind of going, if we are burnt out as individuals and we're not managing our own alignment, nothing that we ever do is sustainable. The support that we give people is not sustainable. Like our marriages, partners, families, like everything. Almost like self-care and self-mastery is your strategy for sustainability individually.
Yes. And I had a friend that is in a, she works in a, like we work very closely together. And she was like, you need to give yourself the care that you are working so hard to give everybody else. And that like just kind of stuck with me and helped me to take the time because it was like, oh yeah. And like, that, but it helps sometimes to have someone external to you remind you like, you need to receive what you're trying to give others and you need to embody what you're trying to give to others. And that's a hard lesson, I think, especially as a female who tends to overfunction. I just want to give everybody everything and it doesn't work.
Oh, I know. I have learned that the hard way. I've set
does
up
not
a whole
work.
podcast and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't
we can't
work.
do it alone.
So because we can't do it alone, and I suppose to wrap up this beautiful, well, first of all, I really appreciate you coming on to talk about this. Well, and share all of your magic and thrive and your mission and your passion for it, which is so amazing. And also we're talking about it in a non-traumatizing way. We don't have anyone coming after us for exposing things or whatever. Like it's like, so I'm going to put in the link for the relief fundraiser in the show notes. I'm going to put in the link for Thrive, of where you can make also a donation to the mid to long-term projects that Melody and all the team are working on the ground in Myanmar. I'm also going to put in a link to her partner page. So if anybody wants, I know it's like between like, is it 1 and 5 and a 10,000 euro package, you can actually be a charity partner with Thrive. Or as Melody said, reach out, like, and here's the thing, like we can make so much more of a difference than just by donating as well. It's like spreading awareness about this, and like obviously the more awareness that happens for Thrive, like the better. Maybe you got inspired and you've got your own NGO or charity or community organization, like reach out to Melody, like share, collaborate. We're at a time of change now, like the systems are all crumbling. So this is a time where we come together and we rise and we lead and we innovate. And I think it's best to do this together.
Yes, we need to do it together.
So is there any more wisdom, any initiation you want to give people before we wrap up?
Well, yeah, I think Thrive is based on the whole concept that everyone's worthy of love. And so I guess my message to you and to everyone listening would to remember that you are worthy of love, and that as you receive that love, that you don't have to be filled up in order to give to others. You can, like, as you receive the love, pour it out to others, because it does like exponentially increase as we do that. And that the small actions we take that feel like they don't always make a difference actually like have a massive impact in the long run. And the more that we do that together, I think it like actually magnifies the impact so much. So by coming together as a community to take these small steps, especially when they're rooted in love, it's just such a powerful, amazing thing. And I'm really hopeful for the future when I get opportunities like this to connect with other people who lead with their hearts. And yeah, I think it's just a really hopeful place to be when we're connecting to each other and loving well. So thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. It has been an honor, and I've loved all our chats today. I said to the guys here before they left, I was like, God, I hope I don't get really emotional, because I've been so emotional over this all week. And I was like, no, this is not a podcast where I'm crying. It's been so amazing to connect, and I really do want to celebrate you for the work that you are doing, and particularly overall in general, but particularly right now as well. Like it's super challenging. Keep leading and doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm so thankful for our partners that make it all happen, because we wouldn't be here without the group behind me and next to me making this happen. So they really deserve a lot of credit too.
Yeah. So this is, a big well done to the entire Thrive team on the ground. Thank you to everybody who's listening. I know I'm like, share, but do share this podcast. Like share, make a donation. Like I've been in this country and I've lived there and I've seen change. I've seen the hope that was instilled, and it really broke my heart when I went back to Thailand 2 years ago, and I met up a lot of my Burmese friends in Bangkok, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Like I was like, and I did almost want to be like, I don't want to know. Right. Obviously I do want to know, but it's gut wrenching. But like, I'm here going like, I've seen change come out of the darkest places in there, and it is possible again. Yes, in any country. Like this is like globally, the whole world is in need of a revolution.
Yeah, and when it gets dark, there's more room for light to come out too. So the darker it gets, the more hope there is for the light to break through and shine.
And I think in Myanmar in particular, like this is a point of change. And I actually think initially I'm here going, global leaders need to step up here, whatever. And I'm like, no, I actually think this will be, it's the impact of the individuals is far more greater than we think, and never underestimate that in any of the work that you're doing day to day.
No, there's a lot of power in grassroots work and individuals coming together for a cause that's greater than like one person. It's so needed and so necessary. And that's how we're going to bring this change about.
Boom. Okay. Thank you so much, Melody.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your journey in activating your higher self. I'm so grateful to every listener in this community and would love to know what you think. So drop into my DMs or send me a message and be a part of the expansion of our collective by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. And let's rise and flow together.